Food shortages, blackouts, power outages, pandemics, political chaos, winter storms, ice storms, World War III. These are all events that could strike at any time. And unfortunately, those who ignore this are likely the ones who will suffer the most when they occur. But acknowledging potential chaos doesn't have to mean living in fear. In fact, it means just the opposite. You can be empowered. By taking action now, rather than waiting, you can take control of your family's future well-being. But where do you start? Hello, my name is Les, and I want to welcome you to the Chef Prepper channel. And in this video, we're going to break down into individual parts what to many people seems like just an overwhelming situation. That is, how to prepare for emergencies, disasters, SHTF type of events. We're going to do this by focusing on practical steps for you and your family as you begin your journey into preparedness. I've been a prepper for over 2 decades, and during that time, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've also learned a lot. If I could go back and start over again, knowing what I know now, I'd do things much differently. Today I'm going to share with you how I would invest my first $1,000 if I were starting from scratch. Notice I said invest, not spend. I'll show you the prepping areas to prioritize, give you examples of things that you should get, and tell you why. I'll also give you the prices as of making this video. And at the end of the video, I'll show you some honorable mentions of things that you might want to consider in the event that you already have some of these areas covered, and you probably will. Let's quickly debunk a few misconceptions about prepping that scare people away or make them get that feeling of being overwhelmed. You got to have a multi-year supply of food from the get-go. You don't. Without some experience, you won't know what foods to include in even a year's supply of food, how to store it properly, or how much to include. How much food do you need for a year's supply of food? You got to have a bug out location that's very remote with no one around you for miles. You don't. In fact, having some like-minded people nearby that you're familiar with will probably be a good thing when bad people come around with bad intentions. You need to be nearly capable of taking on an invading army. You don't. Having a basic home security plan with the things you need to properly take care of your family and defend them will go a very long way without having to be able to take on a foreign invading army. If you find yourself in a situation where you need to take on an invading army, you probably need to bug out. You need to have medical expertise equivalent to a doctor. You don't, and that's not practical for most people. But you do need to pursue good, strong, basic first aid skills and know-how and have the proper first aid items and medical kit available. You need to be capable of accurately and consistently hitting a target at 1,200 yards. That would be a great skill to have, but most people don't have that skill, nor will they ever get that skill. The time, training, and money for the equipment that would enable somebody to reach that skill level, in my opinion, would be far better spent on other prepping priorities, but you will need some firearms and the skills to use them. You need an underground bunker that's hidden so that nobody can see it. You don't, and in fact, a bunker like that might wind up being a death trap. You must have an endless supply of firewood that magically replenishes itself year after year after year after year. Having an endless supply of firewood would be great, and some folks will probably have that. But you don't have to have that endless supply of firewood to get to the end and the other side of whatever the next big event is. So let me show you something. Yep, that's right. Those are trees. But they're no more firewood than they are a house. They have potential, but you will have to work really hard to realize that potential. It's something to the tune that we are heading for a post-apocalyptic Mad Max Road Warrior world or something similar to The Road or I Am Legend. We're not heading for that kind of a world. There will be significant changes. Things will be different. But our goal as preppers is to get from this side all the way through it and to the other side. Then we'll deal with that when the time comes. And if you want your family to have the best chance possible to be a part of what comes after we get to the other side of the big event, you need that insurance policy. So now let's get started on it. There are 10 areas that we're going to focus on. And as we go through these areas, you may find that you got some of those areas already covered, even if you weren't intentionally trying to do so. If so, that's great. Because then you can take that portion of your budget along with the $100 that I actually had left over. So yeah, the $1,000 budget that we're talking about came out to $900. So you can use that to upgrade any of the areas that you need or want to do so. Now, those 10 areas of importance to those of you who are beginning your prepping journey. Area number 1, water. Drinking water is the top priority. There may come a time when your tap water still runs, but isn't safe to drink. So where to start? I suggest 4 cases of bottled drinking water at your local Walmart. And when the time comes that you need to disinfect your water, I recommend that you have a gallon of household bleach. Don't get the scented kind and don't get the low splash kind. I recommend the Clorox brand. And if you'd like to know why I recommend Clorox rather than some of the others, I'll go into those details and how to use this to disinfect water in this video. Of course, you can also disinfect your water by boiling it, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. And while your water is still running, you may want to get yourself some empty bottles of various kinds, pop bottles, whatever kind of bottles or containers. Put your tap water in it, but you got to make sure it's safe to drink when you put it in those bottles. And then you can use a water preserver. This particular one is supposed to keep your water good in storage for 5 years or more. A very cheap and easy way to store a lot of water for a long time. Area number 2 to focus on is food. You don't have to have a year's supply of food to start with. But where do you start? I suggest you start with foods that don't require any cooking or heating, like peanut butter or any other kind of nut butter, peanuts or any other kind of nuts, sardines, and there's various types of fish other than sardines that don't require any cooking or heating. And for more ideas on foods that do not require any kind of cooking or heating, we have a couple videos that you might want to check out. You can see them here. After your no-cook foods, I suggest heat and eat foods. And when it comes to putting that type of food into your prepper pantry at first, I suggest you get things like chilies, soups, beef stews, and things like that that are one-pot meals. Just simply open the can, heat it up, and you got an entire meal. And if you'd like to see more ideas on one-pot meals or meals ready to eat, we have these videos you can check out. And after you get the no-cook foods and the heat and eat foods, then I suggest you start working on foods like the Knorr products, or the ramen, or the mac and cheese. And these type of foods, they do require some cooking, but it's really very minimal cooking. You can also add flavorings and so forth to them, such as ramen with canned chicken in it. Area number 3 is cooking. At some point, you're going to want to be able to cook indoors and to do so safely. But where do you start? Having a primary go-to stove that is safe to use not only outdoors but indoors is going to be essential. And I recommend some type of butane stove. And I recommend that your butane stove be a dual fuel stove. This one is. And the one for the budget we're working with here is a dual fuel stove. That means it runs on the butane or the propane. We'll get into the propane in the next area. The difference between that stove and my stove, that one is an 8,000 BTU And this one's either 12,000 or 15,000. I can't remember without looking it up. That one will do all the things that you want to do as far as heating, cooking, and frying. It will basically be like a burner on your kitchen stove. If you're going to cook indoors, and if you're going to do it safely, you're going to need a couple more items. A carbon monoxide detector that's digital, because that will tell you if there's any carbon monoxide being released before it gets to a level where the alarm goes off. And when you're using alternative stoves and fuels, the chances for an accident or a fire increase above and beyond what they are with just your regular kitchen stove. Therefore, you're going to need a fire extinguisher. And I do have a carbon monoxide detector and a fire extinguisher accounted for in our budget. Area number 4 is heat. If your current way of heating your home is grid dependent, you're going to need to have some kind of an emergency backup heat to heat your home, or at least a portion of your home. But where do you start? A really good place to start would be one of the Mr. Heater or Little Buddy heaters, which use propane. The cooking stove that I recommended also will use the same fuel, the propane. And I recommend, rather than getting just 2 of the propane canisters, that you start out getting 4. Of course, when you use this kind of a heater indoors, you do need the carbon monoxide detector. Even though that is made to use indoors, you still need the carbon monoxide detector and the fire extinguisher. They're already accounted for when we looked at the cooking stove. And this heater and 4 canisters of propane are included in our budget. Area number 5. It almost seems romantic or exciting to think about living without modern grid power. But when the time comes, if you have to live without grid power for an extended period of time, you will wish that you made the investment to provide yourself and your family at least a small amount of electrical power. And I know there are a lot of homesteading and off-grid channels here on YouTube. I like them and I've subscribed to several of them, but they're not living in SHTF type of times. So if you want to provide some grid power during such times, where do you start? If you want to provide your family with grid-like power when the grid's no longer functioning, you're going to need some kind of a power station and a way to recharge it day after day after day after day. Of course, that would be with the solar panel. Now, that's a 300 watt unit there. The larger one is a 2000 watt unit. Solar generators come in all different sizes, smaller than that one, all the way up to much larger than that one. And I do have one budgeted for our budget in this video, which includes the power station and the solar panel. That one is a 200 watt unit. It won't do the things that that one will, but it also doesn't cost as much as that one. But it will allow you to do several things: recharge numerous smaller electronic devices, phones, computers, those type things, run some small appliances, provide you with lighting at nighttime. So there's a lot of uses for the smaller units like that one, and the solar panel is included in the budget for this video. For those of you that might be interested in finding out more information about power stations and solar generators, we have several videos. Sorry for the interruption, but I want to say thank you to all you guys who've been watching our videos, making comments on the videos, asking questions, and to those of you who have bought me a cup of coffee. Some of you bought me several cups of coffee, and for the super thanks, and for those of you who are visiting our Amazon store. All of those things, I want you to know, are very much and greatly appreciated. Thank you guys very much. Area number 6 is security. And for beginning preparedness, 2 primary aspects to consider. Number 1 is dealing with bad people who have bad intentions. And number 2 is an alarm system to let you know that those bad people might be coming near. I suspect that many of you watching this channel already have this area covered, but perhaps not everyone. Dealing with bad people who have bad intentions. There are many different ways, things, and items that will let you deal in one way or another with bad people who have bad intentions, but somewhere along the line, you're going to come to the decision that you need to have a firearm or two. And when it comes to firearms, you got to start somewhere. If you don't have a firearm yet, you're going to find out that they are pretty expensive. So for the budget we're talking about and a beginning prepper, my recommendation is a .22 rifle. And some of you may want to start out with a handgun rather than a rifle. And if so, I suggest that you start out with a 9mm pistol. I know some of you out there disagree with what I just said about the rifle and the pistol, but we are working on a beginning prepper's budget, and it just so happens that the rifle that you see there and 100 rounds for it do fit into the budget that we're working with for this video for a beginning prepper. Now, that rifle you see up there is a Rossi. This one is a Marlin. I didn't go get that rifle for this video. I'm just using a .22 rifle that I already have as an example. Area number 7 is first aid and medical. You do need to be able to handle some emergency medical type situations, but where do you start? A good starting place is to have a first aid kit, a good, reliable first aid manual, some over-the-counter medications, pain relievers, fever reducers, things like that. And we do have in our budget a first aid kit, this particular first aid manual, and 8 over-the-counter medicines of your choice from your local Dollar Tree. Area number 8 is lighting. Lighting. You get the picture now, right? When the power grid no longer works, neither will your light switches. So if you're going to have light at night, where do you start? For room lighting, or maybe having a stationary light in a room, there's several options. The traditional oil lamps, the battery-powered LED lamps, do-it-yourself cooking oil lanterns like that one, and also candles. I understand most of you probably already have the candles, but those are your primary options for having a stationary light in a room when the grid goes down. And then when it comes to mobile lighting, you need a light to see where you're going. There's the traditional flashlights, and there's some other kind of light that will help you see where you're going when you're walking around. Can't remember what it is. I had one, but I don't know what I did with it. So to begin our preparedness journey when it comes to lights, we had a lot of options, so we narrowed them down. And for our $1,000 budget that this video is about, we went with a 2-pack of LED battery-powered lanterns, a couple of packs of tea candles, which you can get for $1.25 at your local Dollar Tree, also a couple of flashlights, again from the Dollar Tree, and that too, not that one, but you can get a headlamp at Dollar Tree again for $1.25. So all of those are accounted for in our budget. Area number 9, hygiene. When some of those times that you're preparing for come along, you're going to want to still bathe, brush your teeth, wash your hair, shave, although I don't know why, but I know some of you want to, and things like that. And when it comes to preparing for hygiene products, where do you start? A good starting place is a trip to your local Dollar Tree store, which is what we budgeted out of this video budget, 8 items for hygiene, $1.25 each for a total of $10. And of course, that's probably going to include some soap. And I'm sure you can see some soaps there that you don't recognize as coming from the Dollar Tree. Well, let me show you these soaps. They're really special. Those soaps are all from Red River Suds, handcrafted. Red River Suds handcrafted bar soap are handcrafted by none other than Mrs. Chef Prepper. If you're interested in trying any of those out, they are listed on our Buy Me a Coffee link. So if you'd like to try those out, go to the Buy Me a Coffee and look around there on our Buy Me a Coffee page, and you will find some of these soaps. And so that brings us to area number 10, communications. So anytime that the power goes out or the grid goes down because of an emergency, a disaster, or a true SHTF event, you're going to want to be able to communicate, which includes receiving and two-way communication. But where do you start? So during an emergency or disaster, even if it's local or regional or even a worldwide SHTF type of event, you're going to want to receive news and information about what's going on. And of course, the way to do that, and a good place to start for your preparedness communications, is an emergency radio. And that brings us to two-way communications. And we did budget for walkie-talkies. In a disaster, you're going to want and need to communicate, so walkie-talkies are a great way to get started in two-way communications. And now, those honorable mentions that I talked about. No doubt, a lot of you guys watching this, you've got some of these areas already covered, and if you are using the budget we're using for this video, then you got some money left over that you can use to upgrade some of those other areas or move on to new areas. So I'll put together a list of some things that you might want to consider. Investing in some books, investing in some training, first aid training, firearms training, bushcraft training, herbal medicine. You might also want to upgrade your firearms or your power stations, solar generators, or you might want to move on and start considering some alternative transportation like bicycles or electric bikes, e-bikes. And of course, you're never going to get too much food. So our $200 budget on food will get us started, but if you're really prepping for a potential long-term event, you're going to need to add more food to your prepper pantry. So those are just some of the areas that you might want to upgrade or add to. So what do you guys think? What areas would you move on to other than these 10? Which one of these 10 would you upgrade? What did I leave out? What do you guys think about all that? I'd really like to hear your comments, because we basically went over my beginning prepping plans. And I understand that I may very well have overlooked several things. So any and all comments about such matters will be greatly appreciated. You still have time to get prepared for what's coming. But every day, that thing that is coming gets closer and closer. And remember, when it comes to being prepared, nobody's going to do it for you. You get yourself and your family prepared, or you're not going to be prepared. The Chef Prepper channel is here to provide guidance, inspiration, and motivation. And I hope I've done that for you guys in this video. Food is one of the very top priorities for most people in the world of preparedness, and canned food is at the top of the list for prepper pantry food.